All right. So we'll go ahead and get started as people continue joining the Zoom room, but welcome everybody to the Right Start Moseley Speed Critique panel hosted by the Muse Writers Center as part of the 2022 Virginia Festival of the Book, which is a program of Virginia Humanities. I'm Susan Deutsch. I'm the program manager at the Muse Writers Center. A little bit about us. We are a 501c creative writing nonprofit located in Norfolk, Virginia, serving all of Southeastern Virginia as well as further abroad, as a lot of our programming like this is now virtual and accessible pretty much anywhere. We offer events, classes, partnerships with festivals and groups such as this one, as well as outreach programs for senior, military, and youth. So check out our website at the-muse.org for more information. We also are offering all of our youth classes for free this semester. We always have tuition assistance available for all of our classes at request, but for youth classes this semester, no need to request. A quick note, we do have closed captions available at any time. If you'd like to turn those on, just click on the closed captions button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And if you're watching the recording, you should also be able to turn this on. So this event is one of in a series of 6 devoted to Virginia writing and publishing. It's presented by writing centers and organizations across Virginia, including the Muse Writers Center, along with 1455 Literary Arts, the James River Writers, Randolph College MFA, Watershed Lit Center for Literary Engagement, and Publishing Practice and WriterHouse. The full series of Virginia writing and publishing events are available at vabook.org, where you can also explore the full 2022 festival schedule, as well as watch past events, I believe, including our recording of the same events that we hosted previously. So happy to have this be our second, what will hopefully become an annual tradition of hosting the Moseley Writers, which has been wonderful. And while you're at the website, vabook.org, please consider making a donation to support the festival's ongoing work. It's really a wonderful project and wonderful to bring together this year, both virtually and in person, so many people from across Virginia and beyond who are passionate about the literary arts. And there's some really amazing guest speakers that we're excited about this year. So I'm pleased to now introduce the first of the Moseley writers, Debbie Prum, whose fiction has appeared in the Virginia Quarterly Review, Across the Margin, the Sweet Bay Review, and other outlets. Her essays air on NPR and have appeared in the Washington Post. She's given writing workshops at WriterHouse, UVA, JMU, and many other places. Thank you all so much. I'll pass it over to Debbie now.
Welcome. I'm so thrilled everyone's here. This year we were deluged with entries, about 84% more than last year. That's great. We're going to critique as many as possible. And as a courtesy, we've decided to email brief comments to everyone who's sent in an entry. So you can expect those in the next couple of days. Now, Jody's going to tell you more about the Moseley Critique Group and the panelists who are here.
Hi, everybody, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We're the Moseley Writers Critique Group, originally established in 1986. Some version of this group has been presenting the Right Start Speed Critique panel at the Virginia Festival of the Book since the second year of the festival's existence. So thank you to the Festival of the Book for such long-lasting hospitality. What we do here is we look at the first 100 words of as many entries as we can that we've received, and we weigh in on what's happening and what's working and maybe some things we might want to see more of. So now I'd like to introduce my fellow panelists. Debbie Prum was just introduced, and I will carry on with Betty Joyce Nash, a 2013 McDowell Fellow, has published fiction and journalism in the Christian Science Monitor, North Dakota Quarterly, and Across the Margin. She co-edited Lock and Load, Armed Fiction, Literary Stories that Probe America's Relationship to Firearms. And Meredith Cole was the winner of the St. Martin's Press Malice Domestic Competition, and her first book, Posed for Murder, was nominated for an Agatha Award. She teaches writing, and her short stories and essays have appeared in various anthologies and magazines. Take it away, Meredith.
Thanks, and I'm going to introduce Jody. Jody Hobbs Hessler's stories, essays, articles, and book reviews can be found in the Los Angeles Review, Arts and Letters, Craft, the Bangalore Review, the Rumpus, the Georgia Review, Charlottesville Wine, and Country Life, and elsewhere. She teaches at WriterHouse. And I am going to share my screen so that everyone can see the entries as we go. And if you're not looking for the right start, you're in the wrong room, but we hope you are. We're looking forward to this, and we're just going to go through these fairly quickly. Start at the beginning. There was no word for rain, no word for dew, for fog, and only rarely uttered snow. They were outlawed by an edict so distant few remembered it, except Lauder, who told us these things as he had many times before. It's not that it doesn't rain, he said from the shade of his porch. At this he looked at the youngest children, since we older ones had seen and felt rain enough. We sat before him. His eyes were deep yellow, the color of water-starved piss. It's just that when the word outlives the spirit of its meaning, a life-giving force, it becomes useless. All right, who wants to start?
I'll start. I felt like this was a really strong beginning. There were a lot of specifics and there was a little bit of mystery. So we had a little bit of both. We have a character who's been singled out from the group, Lauder, who knows things that maybe the other people don't. So we get a sense of dynamic. So there's a lot of distinctive detail, and we can tell we're in a world that's different from our own, which is set up with the restriction on the language. So we get a lot of really good beginning things to ground us in what's to come.
I'm also feeling dystopian fiction right away, which I think if you can do that in the first 100 words, that's really, really well done.
I think it's well done. The only thing I would say is make every word work. So I would take out the its and the theirs and any passive tense, but I thought this is very strong, great images.
Great start. Stan Kemper, my best friend since kindergarten, sits next to me on our front porch. The smell of freshly mowed grass is everywhere. 7th grade is over and I should be summertime happy, but after a lot of not talking, Stan says, your dad's gonna be okay, then adds, your mom too. How do you know? The words came out angry. Stan looks down at his feet and wish I hadn't said that, not that.
What I like most about this is the strong point of view. We are right in this character's head. The narrator is touching all of the senses, the smell of grass. There's a visual there. And then we have the tension that bumps right up by Stan saying, your dad's going to be okay. So now we're worried about the dad.
Yeah, I like that first line. It's basically nothing happened and then suddenly something does. 7th grade is over and I should be happy, but lots of tension.
I like that descriptor, summertime happy. It's a different kind of happy. I would just also bring up, this feels historic to me just because of the names. So if you're thinking that this might be somebody who's currently a 7th grader, you might want to give them a name that would be more common amongst 7th graders today. Just a note on names.
I wanted to jump into, I felt like this one was another one that was really strong. One of the things I'm looking for in the first 100 words are grounding details. I want to know who we're with, why we're there, the kind of the basic who, what, where, when, why. I think I agree with Meredith. This is either historic or it's possibly leaning to YA because we've chosen a very young main character at the end of 7th grade, though a 7th grader story can still be appropriate for adult literary fiction as well. But again, the Stan comment is a good one. But I do like how we get the tension here. I like the pacing of it there, where your dad's going to be okay. And my first thought is, oh my gosh, has there been a car accident? What's happened? And then there's a beat and your mom too. So then we get pretty quickly that what's happened is, well, it comes right after this, we get pretty quickly what the problem is. But that's really a great way to start off that.
Yeah, we're totally intrigued here. You're not giving us every single thing. You're not saying like your dad's cancer was gonna go, like you're not telling us everything, and you don't have to, because now we just want to know. We want to read the next part. So
right. It
start.
gives us enough to form the question, but not to confuse the reader.
Yeah. All right. For as long as he could remember, Lenny thought of himself as different, not in an obvious way you could point to. He didn't look markedly different or behave in ways that drew attention. Lenny's difference was rooted in his sense of being a bit off-center, of seeing the world from outside the frame. His term for this sense varied with age and circumstance. If things were going well, he might think of himself as weird, quirky, idiosyncratic, artistic, or postmodern. At darker times, words like neurotic, out of touch, and screwed up felt like accurate characterizations.
Sometimes I think we crave weirdness in our narratives, and so I'm very intrigued by this character. And we have a lot of telling. Might want to show Lenny's weirdness in a way.
Yes, I was going to make the same point. It's a great telling about his character. You can leave it as it is because it's interesting writing. However, I think it'd be great to use some elements of fiction and put Lenny in a scene where he, in a nuanced way, is being quirky or whatever. I think that would be a great thing to do, to use action and dialogue somewhere, either close on in or to start that way.
Agreed. For me, this feels like the backstory of Lenny talking to himself after he's in a situation dynamically with other characters. I feel like in fiction, we learn the most about our characters when they're talking to each other or interacting in some way. So to me, this would work better if it's supporting something that's actually happening in scene, and then we can build off of that from there.
Right. I like, this is definitely grounding us in character. I think we're going to need to start seeing some story soon. So what does this mean for him? You know, his character, the way he sees himself. What does that mean? How does he act around the world, in the world and with other people? So, all right. Catherine thought it was time to move on. Empty the closet already. You don't have any use for Mom's clothing. I don't have any use for an empty closet either. Maybe you want to take some things? Nothing would fit me. I don't have Mom's height or her shoulders or her style. It was true. Catherine took after me. Slight of build, utilitarian fashion, none of her mother's flair. This was during the Monday phone call. Catherine called twice a week, Monday morning and Wednesday after work. Visits on the weekend. She worked in HR and was very good about organizing emotions, blending the human touch with corporate efficiency.
I liked a lot about this. I think you show very nicely through dialogue the relationship between Catherine and the narrator. And I think you tell a lot about the situation, the family situation, and it's intriguing that the mom's passed away. However, I think if you need to start in your narrator's point of view. I think you need to put tags on the dialogue because it's disorienting, and you don't want somebody to read the first paragraph of your book or short story and have to work to figure out which person's talking and what's going on.
I thought Catherine was the main character. And so I think it's because you said thought. So another option would be Catherine told me it was time to move on. That's a good point that really just jumps in on the importance of kind of harnessing point of view as quickly as you can in a piece. I do love the idea that it's not the narrator's idea to move on, but the narrator's child. That says a lot about the dynamic. So does the idea that the child says, get rid of everything. I don't want any of it. I can't use it. So there's a lot of information there about their relationship. I felt like there was probably like a pinch more room to get just a little bit more beat on what Catherine's emotional connection to the parents was, because she has lost a mother at the same time that the narrator has lost a partner. So I thought it might be interesting to get a sense of, was there something that Catherine did want? Would the clothes? No. What's in the closet? No. I wanted just a phrase that characterized if there'd been something she wanted, because we get the idea that she's emotionally savvy. We're told that, but we don't see that in what she says.
And if you're averse to dialogue tags, which I sometimes am, you can give the speaker a little gesture or a little chore to do really quickly. Like, it was time to move on. Catherine pushed the pocketbooks, into a box or something. Something more interesting than that, though.
Well, we also have a phone call, which is, I think, makes it so that our two characters aren't actually looking at each other. So that can be a little bit problematic. maybe she's
Oh,
washing
the
the
phone
dishes
call.
while
It's a
she,
phone call.
yeah,
Right.
maybe
right,
she's
right.
washing
Sorry.
the dishes while she informs them.
Yeah, yeah,
Something
yeah, yeah.
she's
Right, right.
doing more
Okay.
than one task.
Okay, forget that.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay. Musical instruments clattered onto a darkened stage. Hanging lamps swayed cones of light over bistro tables, and customers of the Event Horizon Night Spot covered and steadied their glasses. Crick, the owner and proprietor, waited with both eye stalks fixed on the stone entry stairwell. The intense rumbling grew as it approached the top of the stairs, then slowed and shut down. Chicket, Crick swore in rapid clicks, and just as business was picking up. When was the last time you were raided? Vizim tucked its tendrils casually under its apron ties. The human purge 5 years ago, just before you hired on.
I love this. I love the humor in it. I love the fact that these creatures are acting like insects. The insects are acting like people, and I love the swearing. The chicket is great. I think I'd break up that first paragraph into maybe 3 sentences instead of 2. But I really like the active verbs too.
I thought they were aliens.
Aliens, well, whatever they are, I like them.
Oh yeah.
I thought they were post-apocalyptic, cockroaches, basically. The things that survive the apocalypse. Yeah.
They are left after the human purge.
Right. I think it's open to all of those things, which is, but what it's not open to, right, is just realism. So we've really quickly established that we have either dystopia or just fantasy or something, and that's secured right away, which is really important to do. And I think this is a very small thing, but I'm just in the phrase, the customers of the Event Horizon Night Spot. We already have that it's a darkened stage, that there are lights over bistro tables. We don't need to know that it's a night spot because we already do. And we can just use the Event Horizon as a thing itself. And to me, there's a rhythm to that. So I just wanted to throw that out. Sometimes making the choices of, word economics based on what's rhythmic for the piece is a good idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I also like that, the first sentence, it could be anything, musical instruments clattering onto a stage and the lamps swaying. But then we very quickly in the second paragraph get to where with the eye stalks, we know that we're not in Kansas anymore.
Or maybe we are after the human purge.
Right.
The only thing I would just sort of caution you is just before you hired on, there was the human purge. I think probably both of these characters know about the human purge, so that might just be a little bit awkward. And you might have to reorder that sentence a little bit, because you never want to have a character tell another character something that they both know.
Right. I think that there was a smidge of that in my reaction as well, that I wondered if this is more a moment of backstory for the reader's benefit, where we get to see that the human purge happened, we get to see that these are bugs. Is this the moment that this story really begins? Is there an action that is specific enough to pull us? I mean, I feel compelled by this story, so I don't want to suggest that it's missing this entirely, but just kind of imagining the order of how the information is revealed and how that affects, the momentum of the story. Like, is this where we learn this?
Mm-hmm. Okay, anything else? No. The Halloween event was going well. Ezra watched indulgently from the safe spot behind the counter between the bowl of candy and plastic leering pumpkins. A peal of shrieking childish laughter filled the air at the antics of the Abaddon witch that had been entertaining the trick-or-treaters for the better part of an hour. The witch in question was pulling out all the stops as he retold the tale. Any off-Broadway production would be proud. Black cobweb lace sleeves flailed as the witch made broad, elegant gestures, long skirt brushing the floor. The den mothers and awkward fathers. We have to cut off for 100 words, I guess, here.
Yeah, as I said before, I like when everything's going well and then suddenly it's not going well. There are a couple of things that I might suggest, for example, flipping that second sentence, I guess, that long sentence in the first paragraph, so that the witch antics, which may be a specific antic, comes first, and then the laughter ensues. And same thing with pulling out all the stops. That's kind of a cliche. So you might want to think about what that meant for the witch in question.
Yeah, I agree. I would get rid of the Halloween event was going well. Just get rid of it. Show how the event was going well. Maybe even start with that second paragraph and using action and dialogue. And I think you'd pull us in a little bit better. The other thing is, I wonder why Ezra is watching indulgently. And I don't know, that bothered me a little bit. I either want to have that indulgently out or maybe describe why.
Right, you get the first hint of how Ezra connects to this scene from how we experience the way that he's watching, and indulgently maybe doesn't do enough work for us to really picture whether he's a kid or whether he's one of the parents. We don't even have that. I'm assuming, based on the safe spot idea behind the counter, sounds like a smaller child. I also think it's what I liked was the word safe spot in a Halloween event where we have someone pretending to be a witch. The number of different kinds of danger that we've sort of drawn into the imagination there kind of amplify with the contrast of a safe spot in what is ostensibly or supposedly a safe event itself. So that made me wonder, in terms of genre, like, is it possible that we're looking at an actual witch? Is this the den mothers and awkward fathers, are these brownies or are these covens? So I thought it left open the possibility that we were dealing with a magical reality, which is something that we'd want to clamp down quickly. But at this point, it's just piquing our curiosity, and it could still work in the realist world. But I just like to throw in when there's hints of other stuff that's possible.
Anyone else? Okay. With the bed raised, she gazes through a curtain of delirium and imagines the town spread in the distance. It's an early morning, late summer sky, August or September. It hurts to think, but looking calms her. From this confused height, she can see a parking lot below her, flat new asphalt with bright white lines, a strip of landscaped lawn with a border of flowered spheres, begonias probably. Several of the plants have died and rotted to compost in the summer heat, leaving gaps in the floral chain. Beyond the hospital grounds is a 4-lane divided highway. Cars shoot by on the road, compact pellets of smudged color.
Boy, there are so many little phrases in this that I love, like curtain of delirium. And I love that last line, beyond the hospital grounds is a 4-lane divided highway. Cars shoot by on the road, compact pellets of smudged color. I like this very, very much. I would want in the next 100 words to get a sense of what kind of conflict there is, what kind of stakes there are, but I do like this beginning a lot.
I think my only confusion is that she's imagining and then it's so specific. But I'm drawn into that as well. So I think it'd be interesting to see what happens next.
Right, that's a good point, Meredith. That there's she's imagining the town in the distance, but then what we describe is what's right there. So there's a little confusion about what she is and isn't seeing. I also feel like we get the beyond the hospital grounds in the third paragraph. Unless the character herself doesn't realize she's in the hospital, I would want that sooner. We get the sense that she's just having some delirium, having some confusion, but we want to be confused with her rather than by her. So I feel like any specifics we can get right up front that help us to translate what the confusion is about, that helps us go through it with her rather than have us kind of from a distance figuring out where she is. But
You're right. It's a confused POV there, though, because if she's imagining this whole landscape and now we're saying this is actually what's there, That's
Well,
a big
I thought she was
switch.
imagining beyond what she could see, and that
Oh.
what she's describing is what she can see. But I think that sets up the possibility for that confusion. So that's also, again, two different takes. So that's a
Yeah.
sign for the writer to nail that down. But the descriptive language is beautiful, and what we get is beautiful. We could just use a little more clarity.
I think what you're bringing up is the point of an unreliable narrator. So when a narrator is unreliable, you still want to convey something clearly to the reader. You know, you have to have the attention of both the reader knowing the writer's unreliable, the character's unreliable, but the writer still needs to be clear.
Yeah, good point, Debbie. I don't really have anything to add. So I think everybody's pretty much said it.
Right. Move on. Dirt blasted Army nurse Sarah Wozniak's face as the helicopter descended. "Get those stretchers loaded," she yelled. "Henry, why is that stretcher separate? Get it on here." "Ma'am, something's wrong. He never got to finish the sentence as a bullet ripped through his head. Sarah hit the ground, searching through the sand swirl for the shooter. A tall man, face obscured by a white keffiyeh and carrying an automatic rifle, stepped out of the chaos. He kneeled on her chest, pinning her down, and yelled in Arabic for a group of non-American soldiers to load the remaining stretcher. The wind from the helicopter blew his keffiyeh open. He's Caucasian. Does anyone know how to pronounce that? No? Okay, I did my best. Apologies to the author.
You did a good job.
Thank you. I say I think this is really grounded in a place, like in a super exciting, lots of action. I always just say watch out a little bit, because if we're sort of point of view Sarah, I don't usually say to myself, I'm a writer standing on the edge of a something and my name is Meredith Cole. Like, that's not usually how I would think about myself. So I think through the actions, you could see that she's a nurse or a medic, and we could catch up on her last name later. I don't know. It felt a little formal to me. I just think that's sort of the beginning. And I know if people are going to want to talk about the end too.
I like the actions. I like the descriptions. I felt confused about how it all happened, and had some questions about logistics. And I feel like one thing in particular is when Sarah, there's Sarah and Sarah with an H. So I'd catch that before I sent it out to an agent. But when Sarah hits the ground, is she on her belly or is she flipped over? Because if the guy is kneeling on her, I just want to have that clear so I can visualize it. Is she crouching down? So that would help me orient myself in this paragraph. But I did.
There might be also an opportunity for a lot more excitement and tension, because I would think that a moment where you hit the ground, there's a shooter, you might be, either you do start crawling, or you trying to get to a patient, are you trying to protect someone, are you trying to get a gun so you can shoot back to protect the, like, we just have these very basic facts. It'd be nice for more detail. And you're right, she's saying it's chaos, but still we need to have someone who, we have to see what her training is. What is she trained to do?
Right. I also have a thing that I say to when trying to visualize a scene, to get inside the character's head and look out their eye holes. And I felt like that was a way to kind of get to what action is possible when someone's pinned to the ground. I feel like there's room for information. We have stretchers getting loaded and a stretcher that's separate, but I'm assuming there's wounded. And it seems to me that the focus we'd want, the focus that can give us the motivations of the characters and really kind of deliver more on the character and efficiency level of the character would be, what's the status of these wounded people? Are they, how emergent are they? That's the way I think a triage nurse would be thinking. Like, we've got an amputee, we've got a this, we've got a that. Instead of the stretchers, it would be the wounds. The wounds would be the way we would think of the character, or something like that. It seems to me.
How necessary. I think that you would also start what I understand is you start imagining like what's the priority with each of your wounded too,
Right.
like what does everyone need and how quickly are you going to get back to wherever you need to go. I think a lot of them went to Germany. They took whether or not you have enough time to go there or where you're going to go for a safe space. The final thing I just wanted to say, just to be careful, I found it very confusing because it sounds like they're loading stretchers, but now this other guy shows up and starts shooting people, and now they're loading stretchers, and I'm like, so are they loading stretchers into the same helicopter?
Right.
And
right.
have they taken over the helicopter? Because I didn't hear those details. And then the last thing I would just really be careful of mentioning that this guy is Caucasian. I mean, I believe in a lot of Arab countries, there's people who look all different ways. So does that mean anything? If he's got blue eyes and blonde hair, he still could be Iraqi. I mean, I just say be careful of that. If he said something that, and he didn't have it, and he had an American accent or something like that, that might be more powerful.
Right. If the point is to get, thank you for bringing that up, Meredith, because I was trying to figure out how to bring that up, because what we want to know is why it's important that he's set apart. So learning what it is that has that how it affects Sarah is what we want to know. Yeah. So, and then the very good point, where are they loading the remaining stretcher? Are they coming along and shooting everyone and then helping? So that is a little confusing. So yeah, did they load it somewhere else?
And would she even notice, and wherever she is, she's being kind of even form that thought. She would,
and we're also please note that she understands the Arabic. So I think that's another aspect of Sarah, which I think is super interesting. I don't think, everyone gets sent to.
This is a very rich scene.
And I'm super intrigued. Yeah. I'm super intrigued by the character and all that stuff. But I feel like this part is actually more like 5 pages than 100 words.
Oh, at least one page.
Okay, well, if you're going to write quick. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
It's exciting.
On a crisp early fall morning, a young woman, lost, disillusioned, and anxious, got into her car, turned the key, and sat staring ahead, wondering, should I or shouldn't I? Are things bad enough that I need to leave, or good enough that I have the time, money, and freedom to go and take a cross-country trip to find some part of me that I don't know where to look? Or is this just a lame effort to run away from it all for a while? They call it reinventing yourself, but it is, whatever it is fine with David DeRovie.
So there was an article in the Writer's Chronicle a few years ago, and it was called "Woman Alone in a Room Realizing Something," and this was the idea that most of the time we want our character to be somewhere doing something as much as possible with someone else around, so that we get the contrast of what the character thinks of themselves as opposed to what others think of them. So when we start, and of course, when we spend a whole story or a whole book with someone, there are opportunities where we just have the character reflecting on who they are and what they're experiencing. But to start on the inside of a character's head that we can't picture yet, we can't picture the character, we don't know what they've just left, we don't know what the significance of what they're pondering is, and what they might leave behind. So it's hard to hitch all of our curiosity on it because we can't quite see enough of it yet.
And who has a bit of a omniscient point of view beginning? I mean, because I don't, as I said, I don't talk about myself that way, like, right. And a woman sits on her couch contemplating whether or not to eat dinner. I mean, I don't think of and so it feels very much that it's someone else watching. Mm-hmm. And then we go into her head, but I felt that the concepts were very vague. I don't know whether she should go or not, because I don't know what's even the problem. Is she tired of her parents, or is she running from the law? Like, I don't know what's going on. So I would need more details.
Well, and David Duchovny.
Well, let me say that that bottom, the David Duchovny was not supposed to be there. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. Good.
Go ahead.
I
Betty Grace.
apologize.
Go ahead.
No,
Betty
no.
Grace.
Well, that was really just my only point. The reinventing yourself seems to fit what she might be thinking, or if she's thinking that clearly. But it's thought by somebody else, David.
Oh.
Yeah, no, that was not supposed to be there.
Sorry, all of our cutting and pasting must have gotten mixed up. So really, the break is fine with.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
That was the 100-word limit.
So
yeah.
I have a suggestion too. I think the concepts are great, and it's a good way to start a novel. But one way to address some of Meredith's wonderings are to just get in the head of that person and show that they feel lost or anxious. Maybe have her fumble with the car keys. Maybe so get into her five senses and actually show things, and that way you'll root us right into her being in that car but I do like the fact that you revealed an internal monologue. I think that's helpful.
I also would love to know, like, is the car filled with stuff? Like, are we doing we're going to take off, or are we not going to take off? Like, we could take off right now. Because I don't get that detail, and that would be helpful too. Like
Yeah, I feel like there's room for a lot of detail. We have a state of mind here, which I think we can all we've all experienced at one point or another. Like, we can empathize with the state of mind, but we need it kind of dressed out further to really get who this character is and why this character feels this way right now.
Yeah. Okay, nothing else? Through gaps between skinny, leafless trees, we hear her calling us. Her voice is sharp and carries from the top of the hill down to where we are. She's back and she's calling us, but it is not dinner time. We didn't do anything. We don't know what she could want. We run back towards the sound of her voice, jump splashing 2 more times in the creek that winds around the bottom of the hill, slipping on the rain-wet leaves that blanket the ground. We have to hit the lichen on every tree as we pass it again.
I'm intrigued. There's a very intriguing opening with a lot of sensory details and nature details, and they're slipping in their game, but they've got this sharp voice calling, we didn't do anything. I love that. Kids are like, we didn't do anything.
It's not dinner. What's going on?
Yeah. And it seems clear that it's children. So it's a lot of showing and not telling us.
I love jump splashing. That's such a great kid word.
And I don't know if it's just me, but I got this feeling of kind of fear, like her voice is sharp. She's back. She's calling us. So,
right.
And I like that we didn't do anything. I almost want some expansion on that, but maybe the expansion comes in the next paragraph, because I feel like maybe it's just from my own childhood. It sounds like it's something that you're running back to that you don't want to arrive at.
Yeah. Well, I think also the voice, the we, makes me feel a little nervous. Like something bad is going to happen to all of us, kind of thing.
Right. I love the sense of tension. You have this beautiful playfulness, this really excellent a descriptive language, the skinny leafless trees and the things other people have mentioned as well, and the sense that they're being called by the mother, I presume. So it's a voice they know, it's something they expect, but there's something about it they don't expect. So you get still they're doodling their way home, hitting the trees. They're not worried, but you get the sense that this sharp. We learn from them that they probably should be worried, even though they have not fully processed it yet, which I think is a very clever way to process that scene.
Okay. Anything else? The ground cracks are filled with recent asphalt, and I smell the freshness enveloping the hotel. During the early 1950s, my friends and I chewed the tar of summer parking lots newly laid, picking at the corners until we pried enough to pop into our mouths like machine-hatched gumballs. The initial attraction was the sweet taste and sense of cleaner teeth. Once chewed, we spat for hours to remove the hot globs from our tongues, teeth, crevices. Today, new asphalt has been spread in irregular patches across the Richmond Inn parking lot, with the expectation of honey mouthfuls gone.
Yeah, I'd love to weigh in on this because I have heard of this, of people chewing tar. And I don't know, it really brought back a memory for me that I don't know where it comes from. But also, when you can open a story with a smell, smells really are a great sensory detail, a little underused, I think, sometimes. And in an opening, you can call up a smell and everybody knows what fresh asphalt smells like. Now, that doesn't mean I might not simplify the opening a little bit, like start with the smell maybe. But yeah, I really appreciate this.
I liked it
details.
too. Oh, but are we finished? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm finished.
She froze for a second.
I liked it too. I was one of the kids that used to chew the tar. And it's the tar that you chew, not the asphalt. And I don't know if we're all going to wind up with cancer because we've done it. I like this very, very much. I almost would like to see it in a scene, but this is lovely. So I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. I almost would like to have this person turn it into a scene with somebody doing it. But
I was getting kind of the sense of a memoir here, which we don't do, which is why we're trying to turn it into fiction for you. It felt very much like today, this happened, which would feel much more like a memoir than fiction. I don't know what you guys think.
I said the exact same thing when I was writing comments. It feels like the beginning of an essay. And that's why I would love to see maybe a scene to start with all of these elements in it rather than the description.
Well, a scene of people eating the tar, chewing on the tar. I think that's that'll just be a really strong way to start. Anyone else?
I was wondering what, I think with the first 100 words, we are always wondering what the today moment is. We get to the today moment at the end of this sort of reverie, which was very unique and fresh and well described. But today is still pretty important. So I wondered, is it possible for the laying of this new parking lot? Like, I guess, what's the connection between the laying of this parking lot and the 1950s childhood experience of chewing the tar beyond the smell? And a small thing also relating to point of view. We're in the first person point of view. We don't need for the character to say, I smell. We are with the character with all the smells. So if we say the smell of the fresh asphalt envelops the building, we're with you. We still have that smell and we're more directly connected to it. So just throwing that out there.
Cool. All right. All the women want to blame Adam for standing there and not stopping me. All the men want to blame me for listening to the serpent and taking a bite, but they are being kind because it was so much more than that. If I'm being honest, it was my fault. All my fault. Paradise. It really was all it was cracked up to be. It wasn't the first time Adam stood there next to me as I contemplated the tree and the fruit on its branches. It all started when he showed us the tree.
Well, I got a kick out of this. I thought it drew me right in. I would just get rid of the really and the wases and the its, because you can find, I think you want to make use of every word and you don't need those. So I would do that to begin with. And I just had one question about why the narrator thinks they're being kind. Unless the narrator thinks it's more of her fault. But anyway, I like this a lot. It made me laugh.
Really strong voice. Definitely pulls you in, and and as you realize that you recognize this story, it's kind of like, oh, so what is this going to be? What angle is this going to be?
Right.
Yeah, I love that line. It really was all it was cracked up to be.
Yeah. I think I would throw out there, I mean, that this is kind of a welcoming beginning to something, but when we're handling a story that everyone knows so well, sort of a culturally ubiquitous story, we have an extra pressure to do something innovative and something completely different. So that's what I would be expecting to develop after this, is something that just takes us in a whole different direction. And Eve blaming herself is interesting, but I also feel like Eve always gets blamed. So how is Eve blaming herself?
How is this a fresh take?
Yeah, so and I'm just saying, like, the pressure for the fresh take is on, right? Because it's a well-known story.
Yeah. Cool. All right, next one. Ronaldo Zeppelini was a childhood hero of mine, a florid-faced font of wisdom, jokes, and sketchy anecdotes. He drove a shiny black Cadillac buffed to a high sheen you could part your hair in. Italian by birth, but American by choice, and a fervent Roman Catholic, he ate fish sticks every Friday and attended Mass Sunday morning, regardless of snow, rain, or hangover. Although purely ceremonial, as self-appointed mayor of our close-knit Levittown community, Zeppelini was a welcomed addition to any barbecue, Christmas party, baptism, bar mitzvah, or beer-fueled shindig held within a 3-block radius of 416 East Timberwood Avenue.
I really like this, but I think it's screaming for a set of scenes. I think you've told us a ton, but boy, oh boy, use your good writing to create these into just a couple of scenes and you'll draw us right in.
Or just to have him do something. I bet he'll do something really interesting. I did want to point out the sheen you could part your hair in is a little bit of a cliche. So you want to watch those, especially with ethnic stuff like Italian.
I also was a little confused by the exact address because I'm sure it means something maybe if you live in Levittown, but I think it's a little too soon to get into like, here's where we are on the GPS map. Like, I'm pretty sure I know where Levittown is, but like, I don't know. I just think that it's a little too, as I said, just like the last names. Although I like Ronaldo Zeppelini, I liked having his whole name. I think.
Me too.
I think after a little bit of an intro, I think having a scene with him, because, you know, someone's a childhood hero, I think it would be much more interesting to have the two of them in a scene.
Right, and it begs the question of, okay, so if it's not childhood now for the narrator, why is Ronaldo Zeppelini right now on the mind of the narrator? So we're beginning the story there, so there's a reason. So I mean, it's clear there's a context, and I think the sooner we get that context, the better. Like, deliver me into why we're in Ronaldo Zeppelini reverie right now. I love the language. It's beautifully rendered, and for me with the address, I assumed that we were starting, like, you know, with the camera zoomed out, and we were zooming into here's where the center of it all was for either Ronaldo Zeppelini or the narrator. So this is, I'm assuming, the narrator's house growing up, and that.
But don't you think that would be like a beer filled shindig held within a 3-block radius of his house would be kind of what you need at that point? I mean, I'm not driving there, so I just don't know if I need the number.
I guess, I mean, like, I can, you know, like, I think a specific address can stand in for giving you more specificity than just saying his house. It kind of can land you. But I see what you mean. But I just wanted to point out, we have about 10 minutes left. So I wanted to check and see where we are with how are we doing with Q&A?
I was just going to say, if anybody has any questions, you can put them in the chat or the Q&A. I'm checking both, and I haven't seen any questions. So feel free to.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on the questions, and we'll keep going.
I would just like to say, though, that it could be that this is still their childhood, And if it is
Right.
still their childhood, I don't think we rarely say someone is our childhood hero. We would just say they were our hero.
Right, right.
So if you're interested in having it still be a child who, as your narrator, you might want to just adjust. and then through a scene, tell us that you're a kid. So, all right, should I do that? Move on?
Yes.
Okay. We said our vows on the second Saturday of June in 1994, held precisely at 2 on a beautiful sunny afternoon in a garden blooming with primrose and honeysuckle, cloudless blue sky glowing radiant overhead. I wore a gray herringbone jacket, navy blue button-down cotton shirt with jeans, and a pair of brown Bostonians borrowed from my father. Coquettishly dressed in a demure off-white gown found on sale at a secondhand shop over on Railroad Street, my bride and future heartbreak Beatrice wore her auburn tresses garlanded with silk daisies and held in her slender hand a bouquet of bright yellow dandelions picked fresh that morning for the casual ceremony at City Hall.
I like all the images, and once again, you're kind of telling us about everything. I would start out with a few words of the vows. I would talk about the suit maybe being a little tight or the shoes being tight. I would have Beatrice being coquettish somehow. So I would show a lot of this, and I wouldn't put lots more words in. I'd make it nuanced, but I think it would bring us so more quickly into the story to create a scene.
Right.
Yeah, it reminded me a little of the vows column in the New York Times. I actually like to read those very much, but it felt like we weren't in the groom's point of view. His future heartbreak Beatrice, like clearly we're looking back at this, so I would think there would be something more emotional besides just.
I'm ready for somebody to do something.
Yeah, I think the details also, we have this beautiful sunny afternoon and primrose, but then we learned that it's a ceremony at City Hall. So that threw me a little bit. And if we're in a garden blooming with primrose and honeysuckle, I'm wondering why we ended up with a bouquet of yellow dandelions when we had all these.
Maybe it's the double wedding, you do the City Hall and then you do the like in the field.
So maybe, so what I felt like there were things that were kind of opposing one another. And I also just would caution that using the word coquettish to me is a word that men often use about women. So it's not necessarily delivering exactly what might be intended in the scene. I think it's just a nod to that she's not wearing white, she's wearing off-white, which has a meaning in sort of the wedding tradition of our country, I guess. But coquettish felt gender specific, not necessary to me. Like that rang a bell for me. So, and she also has a slender hand. And to me, those are two kinds of details that men often write about women. And there's just a lot of articles out there about men writing about women. So it's a thing that women readers often notice. Just throwing that out there.
Anything else? No questions? Keep on going. Arthur opened the door to his real estate office to find Bruce Yardley, the bank's loan officer, glaring at him. Yardley wore a wrinkled tan suit jacket with perspiration stains under his arms. Aftershave barely masked his sour milk odor. Papa stood scowling. I told you I needed 2 weeks. The long and the short of it is, we're going to have to move ahead with repossessing your home, said Yardley. Arthur knew the bank was after their assets, but this was the first he had heard about repossession. He couldn't just stand by while this man humiliated his father.
I wonder whose point of view this story is told in, and I would begin with that point of view. And unless I'm reading this wrong, both Arthur and Papa are in the room, so I mentioned both right off the bat, so we're not shocked. But maybe I'm missing something.
No, I think the logistics are just slightly, could be tuned in slightly more sharply so that we get exactly where we are and what's happening. My first read through, I thought Arthur and Papa might even be the same person, but they're obvious. I think this is Arthur's point of view and Papa is his father. But so does that mean Arthur has just opened the door to his office and there's the bank's loan officer and the father scowling? Because where did the father come from? So it's like my camera angle hasn't included all of the individuals in the scene yet, so I can't quite picture it. So I think it's an interesting scene and it's got a lot of good tension and there's some nice, I like the names. I like the moment of acting, but the logistics could be a little clearer.
And to start with somebody opening the door, I don't know. I guess I'm just saying maybe you could just jump into the scene without the door opening. They could just.
Yeah, I'm really confused because it's his real estate office, but his dad is there. So does his dad own the business or does he own the business? And then now we're repossessing a home. And then instead of being like upset with the situation, he's like, he's humiliating my father. Well, if he owes him money, then I mean, he's kind of a businessman. So I'm sort of not grounded in what's going on. And I would really need to learn a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. There's also the small question of this banker who has previously given him a warning and is now changing the due date of whatever the financial obligation is. So he was going to give him more time and now he's going to repossess it today. To me, that doesn't sound banker possible. That sounds I just, the logistics again, just studying up on what's possible there and positioning the characters more would help us out.
I love the description of Yardley with perspiration stains and aftershave barely masking the sour milk odor. I just thought that was terrific. I love that.
Could picture that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Do we have time for one more?
It is 4:58. So and it looks like we don't have any questions this time.
No.
What do you want to do?
Susan, is it okay for us to do one more?
Sure.
Okay, let's go.
Susan says, go. The familiar stench greets us with a slap long before we reach the chain link gate. After days without electricity, bodies in the morgue at Hôpital Sainte-Croix really start to disintegrate in Haitian heat. But here there's serious competition for bad smells with all kinds of things disintegrating. So no one notices except for families of patients from towns too far down bone-rattling roads to bring cards and flowers for just an hour. The families sleep on blankets and cook rice on stoves in the corridor before leaving for home without a father. The families notice the disintegration.
Full of sights and smells, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And the slap, yeah, it's the bad smell essentially slaps the visitors. Yeah, this is a compelling scene, and yeah.
I think the only thing that got me sort of feeling like I was going around in a circle, which is fine if that's your goal, but the only thing I felt was using the same words again and again. So we used disintegrate, disintegrating, disintegration. And then we already said that we noticed it with a slap. I don't know. I felt that there was a lot of stuff about who notices, and we already said that we noticed, and that no one notices except for the families. And then it says, and the families notice. And in a way, you could feel like that's on purpose, but I just want to make sure you understand what kind of
the repetition. Because repetition can be useful, but yeah, that's a good point.
I kind of like the repetition, although, and I thought the repetition built on itself, and it wasn't just that the person had kind of a poverty of figuring out what word to use. I felt like it was rhythmic and sort of poetic in its own way. But I would take out all kinds of things disintegrating and name a couple of things that are disintegrating, because why not make use of even more images there.
Mhm.
And then I was confused a little bit about the statement about rattling roads to bring cards for just an hour, that they, I didn't understand that. I don't know if anyone
Because
else.
then they sleep on blankets and cook rice in the corridor. So that's not an hour.
I
That's
think,
like a lot more than an hour.
right.
And then by saying without a father, that was so specific. So I was like, so only fathers are dying here, or are other people dying?
Sorry, I think the staying for just an hour is what we're describing as the people who have come from afar, who are there long enough, who do visit longer than an hour. So like if you lived near Hôpital Sainte-Croix and you were going to visit someone just long enough to bring a card from home and sit with them for an hour, you might not notice. So it's only the people staying there longer. But I think that for just an hour phrase is placed in a place where it makes it harder to make that coherent connection. So
well, then you may have to say the close by families sleep on blankets and cook rice, and like.
Well, I think the ones who come from afar are the ones who sleep on blankets and cook rice, and they're the ones that are there for days on end at the hospital or at the hospital grounds. So I think everyone else just goes home. But it's a phrasing change. But I wanted to point out that mine, when I downloaded it, came in the form of a poem. So this is shown in.
I did too.
Prose. And I'm not convinced that it wasn't a poem. And I think that's part of why there was so much repetition of language, and that was a part of a poetic gesture. What I wanted, if it's not poetic, if it is narrative, is I wanted to know whose point of view we were in. We've gotten we've gotten a situation more than a scene that's been described in great detail. Like I feel like I could walk into this place. We've got the setting, but what I don't have is which father are we leaving without? I feel like we could use this as a jumping off place to walk into somebody's very specific experience in this very specific place. But right now we're still kind of hovering over it. And that may be because this is a poetic exploration rather than a specific, but even in a poem, I would rather be in the specific one-on-one encounter than just hovering away.
Also, we start with the us and the we, and then we go to the no one and the families and that kind of thing. So staying in either one.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think we need to end here. And I'm going to thank everybody for being here. I'm going to turn it back over to Susan. Thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all so much. Thanks to everyone for joining us and watching, whether live here in Zoom or watching the recording. And thank you so much to our wonderful Moseley writers. I know I learned a lot. And thank you to the Virginia Festival of the Book and Virginia Humanities again for bringing us together and making this possible. Again, if you want to see more events, both the virtual writing and publishing series, as well as the main festival, which is coming up next weekend, go to vabook.org. If you'd like to learn more about the Muse Writers Center, go to the-muse.org. And thank you again for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.
Yeah.
Thank you, Susan.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.
Everybody.